Hey, hope you're all doing well. So I'm here today to show you the correct way to order your effects in your GT-1000. Now that is very much an oversimplification because there's not really a right and a wrong way to order your effects. There are a few hard and fast rules, like you don't want to put your cabinet before your amp because A, in a real world, it's not going to happen, and in the digital situation, ludicrous. So I'm going to show you how I like to order my effects, and that is very much just my personal taste. But I'm also going to show you other ways that you can arrange them because, of course, that's what we're here for. Alright, this here is the preset. This one is called Dirt. This one is available in my pack. I've got the X-modded amp. I've got a rat distortion in front, a noise suppressor, a couple of EQs, a little bit of plate reverb here in parallel with the delay, and the cabinet is just the 4x12 number 2. Using my Gibson Les Paul Gold Top. First of all, I have this distortion before the amp, which is a no-brainer. Most people know that that's what you want to do with your distortion. Now, this is the Nuno Betancourt idea there. Got the rat, drive down, level up, and it just boosts the amp a little. So, with it... Cool, so let's back the gain off on the amp a little bit. Cool, I'll change up this distortion now. We'll give it an overdrive. So an overdrive is, of course, designed to push the front of an amp and boost that saturation, get you some more gain, especially for this kind of amp, not the TSL, more the Silver Jubilee, which is still a high gain, but you want sometimes a bit more oomph for those lead tones. Also, a lot of them tighten up the low end so you don't get so flubby on those chunky riffs. So a Tube Screamer, for example, is one of those. Now there you go. I've dropped the amp gain back, but you can hear when I bring that in, it boosts the distortion on the amp, but it also tightens up the low end. Now tightens up as in it doesn't sound as bassy anymore. So listen again. So that is pretty much a standard. Everyone does that. That's just how I would go about approaching your overdrives with your amps. Now you can see here I have a noise suppressor after the amp. I'm pretty sure it comes stock set up like this in the GT-1000 when you buy them. Now I do it like this because I don't want the guitar signal to be affected before it's hitting the front of the amp. Now the noise suppressor does exactly what that sounds like. It suppresses noise. So if I'm cutting off some of my guitar input, I'm going to be not getting the right gain and feel from the guitar going into the amp. So I put it afterwards to bring that overall noise from the amp down. So if I turn it off, that's the noise right there. So then the noise suppressor comes in and it reduces it. So that's how I like to use my noise suppressor. A lot of people do it this way and they put it before the amp. I personally don't like that. Now you can put it as well after the distortion. Still does the same thing. And same thing in front there. It's much of a muchness, but like I said, personally, I like it afterwards for the reason I explained just a moment ago. Alright, so on my board here I've assigned a chorus. I'll turn that on and you can see my chorus is back here towards the end of the signal chain, and it sounds like this. do that because I like my chunky distortion sound, but I don't want my chorus being pushed through the distortion. I like it the other way around. It seems to be a bit cleaner of a chorus when it sits after the amp. So to move it back to the front, definitely loses something being in front of the amp, not afterwards. Now in this case, I'm pretty sure that that being there turns it to mono. So that's one thing to take into consideration as well. Even though this is a stereo chorus, if I move this back in front of the amp, even to that point here, going through the amp, it's going to change it to mono. It's definitely doing that. So this here is a dual delay. You can hear that going left and right. Whereas if I bring it here, now that is definitely only in mono. Move it quite simply to the other side of the amp. Perfect. Again, comes down to personal preference. I do like it very much after the amp. Next one along I have is a phaser. Now you can see this loaded up here. This is a phaser. Now this is one that I do like in front of my distortions and in front of my amps. The effect level could probably come down and the direct mix could maybe come up. Yeah, no, it doesn't seem to work. To me, it doesn't work in that position. So again, sounds heaps nicer going through the distortions. All right, next thing we're going to look at here is a compressor. I've changed to a clean tone. This is just the natural amp set as such. So firstly, without the compressor, loaded currently is the X Comp. There's not a lot of compression there, but you can definitely hear that it's doing something to the guitar. The idea that I'm going for here is to smooth out the guitar tone. The lows come up, highs come down, and the whole clean tone is nice and smooth. Most people have this compressor right at the start of their chain because the guitar is the first thing that's going to be hitting it. It's not going to be affected by anything else prior to the compression. However, again, you can put your compressor somewhere else if you want to. You can put your effects before it or you can put it after it. But usually they go in front. So let's boost the ratio now. So it definitely gives the guitar a little bit more life. You can feel the compression under your fingers. So let's try the phaser now. So if I move the phaser in front of the compressor, what about the chorus? Let's move the chorus now, both firstly after it. I'm the type of person that likes my compressor pretty much first because I want the compressed signal going into the effects. I don't want the compressor compressing the other effects. All right, so let's have a look now. So you probably saw as well, I've got some EQs here. Now they are 100% just to make the amp sound a bit nicer. Let's go back to my heavy tone. I'll show you what it's doing. Now that's just my personal preference. The amp tone is not necessarily bad with the EQs turned off. It's definitely different. I just like to clean it up and sort of sculpt my own tone, and that's what I've done there. Now I've put those after the amp because I'm shaping the amp sound. Obviously I've got the bass, middle and treble controls on the amp itself, but these here are just cleaning out some of the frequencies that sound a bit that I'm pulling those out. All right, so let's move now to another obvious one, which is the reverb. I'll turn up the effect a little bit. Now, I've got this going in parallel. Parallel basically means that this side over here is my dry signal, and this side here is 100% wet reverb. You can see just here I've turned down the direct level so that I'm not doubling up the clean sound. It's only reverb. And when you set it here to dual and stereo, however you want to say it, then they blend nicely back together. That is 100% personal preference. I like to do that because I like my delays to be nice and clean and not going through the reverb, but not all the time. This is only a sometimes thing. So let's try it now, just in series. Oh yes, so there's, you can hear I've got the reverb 100% wet. So if I turn the dial a little back up, there's my guitar. Now this divider, you have to change that from dual back to single if you're going to do it in series. Now this is the sort of thing that, unless you're going for a particular sound, you want to have your reverbs at the end of the chain. So if I put it in front, remember now it's going to be reverted back to mono. Oh, and I've got the noise suppressor on, so turn that off. Now again, there's nothing wrong with having your reverbs before. Like I said, if that's the sound you're going for, wonderful. There's a lot of people that use, for example, a spring reverb or anything going into some kind of Fender style amp. So let's change this to a twin combo. It's not really my thing. It sounds all right, but again, I like a reverb that's in stereo, so it's going to fill up all of the space. So again, it can work before the amp or it can work after the amp. If you're going to have it afterwards, it's going to sound a lot cleaner. Going into the front of an amp, obviously the reverb is going to be affected by whatever settings you've got on the amp. If it's going through distortion, the reverb's going to get distorted. But if you've got a sound going into reverb, it's just like being in a big space. Next one I'm going to look at is delay. Now they all come set here at the end of the chain. My foot's going dead. Again, options, options, options. When it comes to delay, I like mine at the end. Now, that delay is now going into a reverb as well. So every one of those repeats is going into the reverb, so the repeats are going to have reverb on the repeats as well. Now, I like that sometimes, but I do very much like them to be separated as such. Reverb for me needs to be 100% wet, so that this way the dry signal is going to be coming through the delay, and the delays are only going to be coming through this side and not going to be hitting the reverb. So you can hear all of those delays are really crisp and bright, but the reverb is still there as well, so they blend in really nicely together. Now, to go back to single on this little dooba, there's no rule that says you can't have your reverb before your delay. That is also pretty cool. So now, all of these repeats are being hit with reverb. Which is a cool and pretty unique sound in itself. Unique, well, maybe not so much, but it still is nice, and it's a lot of fun to play with those sort of things and find a sound that works for you. Alright, it's made it this far. I'd love it if you hit that subscribe button and join me in this journey. Make a comment, let me know if there's anything you'd like to see. Alright, let's move along. So the next one here is going to be the cabinet block. So in a real world situation, the last thing in your signal chain is obviously going to be the guitar cabinet, because that's where the speaker is and that's where the sound comes from. But this is a digital world, and that's amazing. Now this is really cool. What you can do, now that comes usually set up in here, and you would think that they need to be in there so that this tells that to go to there. However, it does not. You can bring that back here, and all of these effects now are going to be post cabinets. So if you think about it, all of these reverbs and delays are also going through this cabinet block. So they've got a certain sound on them, but then they hit this, and whatever speaker sound is on that is going to affect the reverb and delay as well. So if we bring it around like that, it's still in stereo. So if we have the cabinet prior to the reverb and the delay, then these reverbs and delays are going to be the most clean and authentic sounding versions of what they are. They're not going to be going through an amp or through any other effects, even a cabinet. It's just everything's going to be hitting the reverb and the delays, and you can clean them up as you need to. In the GT-1000 is these mastering effects. Now this mastering effects is 100% designed, and it says so in the manual, that it needs to be post cabinet block. You could also put it after your delays and reverb. Now personally, I don't want my reverbs and delays touched by anything other than themselves. Awkward. As I have said, I think they should be at the end of the chain because that's where it sounds the nicest. Now, of course, delays, you can put it before your amp. Into a heavy sound, of course, all of those repeats are being pushed into a distorted amp there, so that's going to amplify all of those delay sounds. However, if you put it into a clean sound, so again, there's no hard and fast rule. You can put it into the front of a distorted sound if you want to. You don't have to do it any other way. I would probably drop the effect level right down. Well, you can see right there, I've just dropped that by a good 50 to 70% there, and it's made bugger all difference. If you have that noise suppressor on, which is kind of a thing, but the noise suppressor is cutting off the delay repeats, and we don't want that, so we want it after. Massive, massive difference when it comes to distorted tones and delays. So there we go. I think that's a pretty good overview of most of the effects that you can use. Anything can go pretty much anywhere. Look, I've talked a lot. I think end of the day, the best way to go about all of your effects is just to try it out. If it sounds good to you, awesome. Even if it's different to what somebody else does, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily wrong. If you're still not sure about some of those effects, have a look at what your favorite guitarist does and just do what they do, because you obviously like them for a reason. If you play it and it feels weird, try it somewhere else. You might find something that works for you even better. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned. See you next time.